And so they always need our cooperation to go along with their programs.
So they try to sell us.
Right. They try to sell us. Democracy, this majority says this, believe in this, do that. The war on terror, we got to be scared. They're always trying to do things to sell us so that we'll go along with them. And once we learn not to cooperate with them, then we win the game. And that's the point. Don't cooperate with them. Don't go along with the program anymore. Stop it. Join forces. You and I should run for president and vice president and take over this country and bring freedom back to this country. That's what it takes. Two people like you and I, statesmen, who believe in freedom, who believe in Thomas Jefferson and the Constitution and the Founding Fathers to make this country whole again. Because right now it's in the grip of the evil ones, And the only way to stop that is for good men to stand up. Was Edmund Burke said, evil can only thrive when good men do nothing?
Yes.
Right? We got to do something. That's what it is, Silence is golden, but when it comes to your freedom, it's yellow. We have to stop being scared. We have to stand up and do what's necessary to stop these bankers, these elite, this government full of lies, congressmen full of liars, people destroying our borders, creating a government. I mean, imagine this. Here you are in America, and they're combining America, Canada, and Mexico into one country, the North American Union, and the American people don't know anything about it. It's not even in the press. They'd rather talk about Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump calling each other names than discussing the fact that we're merging into one country. The press doesn't even report it.
Or that Paris Hilton doesn't wear underwear.
Yeah, Britney Spears. But I mean, who cares? I mean, the fact of the matter happens to be that tells you how controlled the media is. Here you are combining America, Canada, and Mexico into one country, and you don't see it in the press.
Unless maybe it's Lou Dobbs.
You don't see it in the press. You just don't see it.
It should be the top story everywhere.
Everywhere, and not a word about it, really. Why? That tells you there's the evidence that it's controlled. They don't want the American people to know what's going on. That's why they don't protect our borders. That's why we're losing our Constitution, the very document that secures our freedoms.
There is a rising tide against it.
There is a rising tide, but we have to mobilize. We have to mobilize. And we have to get all the good people in this country to stand together and say, I'm not going to take it anymore. Well, I think if you analyze the situation, and if you realize that since the Federal Reserve has come into being in 1913, illegally, without a constitutional amendment, by bribing a few senators during Christmas vacation, they turned over the most important power that the American government has, the creation and issuance of money, to a private bank. Through that private bank issuing money, they have destroyed this country. They have destroyed the purchasing power of the money in this country. They've created social programs that are destroying this country.
Thanks to the work of Aaron Russo and Ron Paul and many others, folks are starting to find out who the real enemy is. Offshore private banking corporations that have engaged in a hostile corporate takeover of the United States and almost every other nation on the planet. And the private Federal Reserve is their beachhead here in the United States. Ron Paul has introduced H.R. 1207 that at time of taping has over 87 sponsors, just to audit the private Federal Reserve that arrogantly says it's above all U.S. laws and above all three branches of government and that no law enforcement can investigate them. I mean, how asinine is that? How above the law is that? How ridiculous is that? Everybody else gets audited. Nobody else is above the law but them, this group of plutocrats, this group of polycentric bankers that are setting up this neo-feudal world system.
Now, they've taken over our government, both Republicans and Democrats. There's no difference anymore between the two parties. They control both parties. It doesn't matter to them which one wins, because who's ever running for president will be someone they anoint, okay? Whether it's Hillary Clinton or John McCain running for president next year, they're going to be people that are going to do what they want them to do. And the fact of the matter happens to be that you can't win an election unless you have enough money to win. They make sure who gets the money.
The most important point is they control both parties. And the public continues to only focus in on the distraction of the left puppet and the right puppet instead of looking at the puppet masters. In fact, more and more of this is coming out. Top Senate Democrats, bankers own the U.S. Congress. Senator Dick Durbin on Chicago radio station last week blurted out an obvious truth about Congress. This is from Salon, that despite being blindly obvious, it is rarely spoken. And, quote, the banks, hard to believe in a time when we're facing a banking crisis, that many of the banks created are still the most powerful lobby on Capitol Hill. And frankly, they own the place. So there is one of the most powerful Democrats in the country, top Senate Democrat, saying bankers own the U.S. Congress. It's true. Let's admit it. Let's stop debating the two puppets they put out in front of us, the liberal puppet, the conservative puppet, and then every time we wake up to one of the puppets, they just replace it with another puppet. Let's look past the puppets to the puppet master above them that's controlling the puppets. That's all Aaron Russo and myself and Ron Paul and so many other people are saying. Let's get back to a culture of liberty versus tyranny, not this left-right diversion. You know, when folks are sick of Obama in 4 to 8 years, they're going to put a Republican in, and they'll put out different rhetoric but carry out the same operation. Because as the top Senate Democrats said, the bankers own the place, even though they engineered the crisis. And make no mistake, they did engineer it by design. Their own documents, their own IMF and World Bank documents admit that. And out of this crisis, they're setting up the new Bank of the World, according to Time Magazine and Newsweek and the Wall Street Journal and just hundreds of publications with headlines like, and now for world government, in the Financial Times of London. They create the crisis and then say, okay, our Ponzi scheme's falling apart and bankrupting you. Give us $12.8 trillion in the first 6 months of the banker bailout. And now they say, we'll set up a Bank of the World you pay your carbon taxes to, and private bankers will rule your life, and we'll pay private greenhouse gas carbon taxes to two firms owned by Al Gore, and this is publicly admitted. I mean, this is how bad the scamming is getting. And we've got to wake up. We've got to say no. We've got to get angry and get in the face of the New World Order. Again, the private offshore bankers own America. They own both parties, but they get you in a rah-rah, Coke versus Pepsi, Redskins versus Cowboys, fight. And you get in this little political fight as followers instead of looking past that to the actual global elite and what they're setting up.
So through these bankers attempting to taking over America, knowing America was the freest nation in the world, it was necessary for them to take over America, take away our gun rights of freedom to bear arms, and create a country where we become slaves. Because once they take over America, the rest of the world becomes a lot easier for them. And so by creating 9/11, an event to terrify the American people that were being attacked by terrorists, you create a world where there's an enemy that can never be pinpointed. You can never win the battle. It's a 100-year war. It's a never-ending war on terrorism, right? So you're always fighting this war. And through the war on terrorism, which is the 9/11, which is the first lie, then you create the war on terrorism, which is the next lie. Then you create the war in Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, which is the next lie. And it's one lie to the next lie to the next lie. Now it's going to be Iran, the next lie, sending more troops and a surge into Iraq.
Think about what Aaron Russo is saying here. The war on terror is a war on the American people and the people of the world. You see, the elites always sell the public on tyranny by attacking a minority that's unliked first, or the outsider. Oh, we're just getting rid of the Bill of Rights and Constitution and having secret arrest and FEMA camps and the Military Commissions Act for foreigners. It's just for them. And now the federal government has been caught saying that gun owners, conservatives, people buying ammunition, they've been caught saying that returning veterans are the #1 threat to Homeland Security. And in a way, that's true. People that know about the Bill of Rights and Constitution and know that our country is being taken over and hijacked by foreign banks, I guess they are the threat to the criminals that have done this. That's all the New World Order is a private corporate takeover of the nation states, of the governments of the world. And then these private corporations bring in a tyrannical form of neo-feudalism that they call corporatism or fascism. Mussolini said that fascism should properly be called corporatism. And that's what it is. And they create the socialism to get control of the wealth and to control society. Then they pipe the profits to themselves. So they socialize the general public to get control of it.